Welcome back to the Unanimous Decision Podcast. I am your host, D Palm. Follow me on Twitter at DPalm66. You can follow the show on Twitter at UDPod. And do us a huge favor. When you're talking about the show on Twitter, on any social media, and you want to give us a shout out, you want to talk about something we're talking about, make sure you use the hashtag UDPod. That's the best way for us to find you. That way we can shout you out and thank you for listening to the show. If you love what I'm bringing you every week, make sure you join the rest of the MTR Network. Follow them on Twitter at the MTR Network. You'll get all our podcasts everywhere you get podcasts for absolutely free. We bring you politics, gaming, video game reviews, TV reviews, movie reviews, comic book reviews. We just got finished recording Iron Fist Season 1 reviews coming out later this week. And now, of course, we're bringing you sports with Unanimous Decision Podcast. Now that you find the show, don't lose the show. Subscribe to the iTunes Store. Make sure you leave a 5-star review to have all your words that you want to have read on the air, whether it's mean about me or helpful or nice or just a rumination on the show. I will read it as the commitment we've made to you. You can also reach the show by emailing us at udpodcast@gmail.com. I've got 2 bits of listener feedback that I'm really excited to get to today because the first one involves our MTR network-wide proposition. If you're a black woman with a business or event that you want promoted for free, email us at bwbusiness@mtrnetwork.net. The email I've got today comes from one of our listeners, Dewan Green, who runs Mental Playbook Consulting LLC. So what this is, it's a mental training for athletes and coaches from the high school level through retirement. The mental training involves working on skills such as imagery, focus and attention, and building mental toughness. I played college sports. I was an All-American in high school. I know for a fact that having people tell me how to achieve my goals and get myself in the right mind frame for doing so was imperative in making sure I could do the best on the field or on the mat, whatever it was called for. It's something I wish I'd really continued in college. It's a very cool service for athletes. It's like having an athletic trainer for the mental side of the game. We've seen the niche and the specific things pop up all across the country, all across the world. People are specializing athletically to tone their bodies. They're doing it at younger ages. Make sure you're growing your mind in the same way. You can email them at thementalplaybook@gmail.com or by phone at 985-710-27191. There's more information on the website at www.thementalplaybook.com. There will be a link in the show notes. Thank you so much for emailing us and letting us know about this business. It's something I wish that I'd had when I was coming up, when I was playing sports still, before I was washed up and talking on the internet. And I hope that's something that our listeners can take advantage of. Also, we've got an email from Renee, one of our listeners. I'm going to read it here. First, I've been a listener since episode 1, and I love you, D-Pod. Your perspective on sports that strikes an entertaining and informative balance. Thank you very much. In addition to sending some love, I'm hoping also that you could give the story below a signal boost. It's a story that many probably don't know, as gymnastics is only on most sports fans' radar for a brief period of time every 4 years. That's 100% true for me, but I'm glad you emailed me this story. Shilese Jones is a black, promising junior-level gymnast whose family has come through a rough patch. Her father, Sylvester, who is a primary caregiver for her and her sister, has endured dialysis for a number of months. Fortunately, things appear to be looking up as doctors have found a match, and Sylvester underwent a double organ transplant a couple weeks ago and appears to be on the road to recovery. But as I'm sure you can figure, medical expenses are astronomical for a situation like this. This family's living expenses are mounting. Even though she's on scholarship and others are trying to help, her gym tuition is one of the things that's in danger of being cut to save money. Getting a sponsor is completely off the table because gymnasts cannot accept anything beyond strict training expense stipends from the national team and certain prize monies, i.e. from the Olympics, to retain NCAA scholarship eligibility. The owner of her gym has started a GoFundMe to help them with expenses until Sylvester came back on his feet. The link is below. Any bit listeners can spare would be much appreciated. Again, guys, the GoFundMe link will be in the show notes. This is a great cause. Anytime that you can say that you're helping someone who legitimately is chasing their dream, it's something that we can all do. If anyone could pitch in $2 or $3 or any much more, I think any bit would help. I know I'm going to donate as soon as I get done recording here. And this is something that I can easily get behind because, the note says, there are rules in the NCAA as far as eligibility is what you can accept even in times of distress. And fortunately or unfortunately, or however you want to look at it, the NCAA rules haven't caught up with the crowdsourcing type thing that's been happening across the country because our medical system's so broken. And so this gym has taken upon themselves to fight for one of their members, and I support that 100%. And again, the link will be in the show notes. Make sure you check that out. Now we got the business out of the way. Let's get down to the business of the day. I've got on with me today if you frequent Twitter, I don't know to call you the most notorious hater alive is sufficient, but it feels right. We've got Leonard Brothers. Follow on Twitter at L Brothers Media on Twitter. What up, Leonard?
Yo, what's going on, man? How am I a hater? Like, what's that about?
Look, man, I don't know if maybe it's just me because I feel like you and I don't really mess with people, but if I know someone's gonna mess with me about a tweet, it's gonna be you.
Well, you mess with me about Twitter sometimes, so you know what I'm saying? I'm tossing it right there.
I hear you. No, I definitely hear you. I definitely appreciate it. So before we get into too much of the show today, I do want to talk to you about your sports fanhood because as you rep consistently on social media, you're from Hartford, but you're loudest at NCAA time because you're a UNC fan, right?
So what happened with that is, I'm a Hartford, Connecticut native, as he said, but I'm a North Carolina fan. That's my college team. And the story behind that is, I was raised by my mother. You know what I'm saying? My parents were married. They were married for 10 years. They got married in 1975 and divorced in 1985. I was born in 1980, so I was 5 years old when they got divorced. And you know what I mean? So I'm closer with my mother's family because it was just her and I after they split up. So, and actually both of them are from North Carolina. They're both from the state of North Carolina, the northeastern part of the state. If you know the state of North Carolina, they're from Hertford County and Gates County, North Carolina, whatever. You know what I'm saying? A couple hours from Raleigh, from Chapel Hill and all that stuff. So, we used to come down to North Carolina all the time, to visit our family, you know what I'm saying? Visit our family. My mother is, one of 8 children, 6 girls, 2 boys. And so we used to always come down for like holidays. And so, I would spend, a few weeks in the summertime and all that kind of stuff, down here in the state of North Carolina or whatever. I actually live down here now. We'll get to that, at some point too, I'm sure. But, so yeah, like the family members that I have that are sports fans were Carolina fans. You know what I'm saying? I've got, cousins, uncles, people like that. They were North Carolina fans. And this is, I probably started getting into it like the late 80s going into the 90s or whatever. So probably like 87, 88 and all of that. Right. So, and because they were one of the best teams in the country, they were always on television. So even though I lived in Connecticut, I was able to see Carolina games on TV all the time. So, and UConn at that time wasn't really all of that good. They were building up to becoming a champion. And I think my first year of college, which was 1998, 99, I think that was the first time that the UConn men actually won a championship. So my life before that, they were still kind of ramping up to that level, but Carolina was already, sort of at that point. So again, being able to watch Carolina games on TV, even when I was at home, and then, we'd come down for like Thanksgiving or something like that. And, whatever the most recent game was before we made the trip, I would be able to watch that or whatever and, get with my cousins and all that. Be like, yo, you see the game the other day? You know what I'm saying? So it was just kind of like a thing. So it's sort of a 2-pronged thing because there's the family connection of them being from the state of North Carolina. And then also the fandom of some of my family members. And if they had been Duke fans or NC State fans or even Wake Forest or whatever, then I probably would have went with one of those teams. Probably Duke more so. It's kind of strange for me to even say that, but at that time and still to this day, Duke is another team that's, top level team. So they were on TV just as much as Carolina. So like if they would have been Duke fans, then I would have, went that way or whatever. But, it was Carolina. So that's how that happened. You know what I'm saying? A kid from Hartford, Connecticut, being a big UNC fan. And I think, also, before I wrap this up, just me kind of going on about it or whatever. Of course, you can ask me whatever else you want to about it. But, I lost my train of thought. Oh, I was going to say, most people from up north, you know what I'm saying? Y'all probably already noticed, but most people from up north have Southern roots. You know what I'm saying? I just mentioned that both of my parents are from North Carolina. And, I've been in this state since I went to school, 98, NC State University or whatever. And I see Connecticut tags all the time. I've seen license plates from all the other 49 states. Alaska and Hawaii included. I've seen, license plates from every other state in this country here. So we've all got ties somewhere down south or whatever. So it's not really uncommon. There were other Carolina fans up that way or whatever. I remember one year, I forget which one it was, when I was still up there, still in high school. Like the opening couple rounds of the tournament, they had something at the Hartford Civic Center. I think it's the XL Center now, but at the time it was the Hartford Civic Center. And North Carolina was in one of the regions that was playing there, probably like the East region or whatever. And I remember, just the excitement of them being there. There was some other good teams there or whatever, but I remember mad people being excited, like, yo, North Carolina's here. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's how I got started, man. That's basically in a nutshell. And of course you can ask me anything else you want to. So that's pretty much it.
No, that was dope, man. I like that because it's the kind of classic American story on why you like sports. It's tied to family and tradition. It's the stuff you loved growing up. And we'll talk about some of the things that I've had torn away from me in the last couple months that I grew up with. But I want to ask now, you mentioned you're an NC State grad. I love NC State. I went to a wrestling camp there when I was in high school. They tried to recruit me to wrestle there. I got to ask, does that ever conflict with your UNC established fandom?
Nah, it never does for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's crazy because, so the reason I chose NC State was because my last couple years of high school, I was really interested in becoming an engineer. So in the summer of 96, when I was a sophomore going into my junior year of high school, I actually came down to Raleigh to do a program at NC State. It was called SITE, Student Introduction to Engineering. And what that was like, you got a chance to stay on campus for a week, and you could, with the application, you filled out like the kinds of engineering that you were most interested in. So like, I'm most interested in like electrical or mechanical or this or that. And excuse me. So we came down here for that. And, each day we got a chance to sort of like take a tour of the campus, take a tour of the facilities, meet some of the instructors, meet some of the students, just kind of get a feel for what it'd be like if you were to attend this school and be in this particular program or whatever. So we did that. And then I also did another one at this school called, Manchester Community College up in, Connecticut or whatever. There was a 5-week program that I attended over there. And so every day I would drive out to Manchester from where I was at, which was probably maybe about, 45 minutes or something like that. Make that ride every day, 5 days a week. And, we had a chance to mess around with different stuff. So like, we got a chance to build little things. And, what I'm saying, it's the first time I ever used a soldering iron and all that kind of stuff. I actually burnt my hand on the soldering iron one time and shit. So, got a chance to do all of that. So that was 96, and then 97 and 98 or whatever. I was like, yo, all engineering. So a lot of the schools, I applied to all kinds of schools, you know what I'm saying? Obviously NC State was one of the ones that I applied to. I think A&T, which is a black school out in Greensboro, NC State and A&T are both land grant universities. So they're big time on engineering, and math and science and stuff. And they're also big ag schools too. You know what I'm saying? So I had, like Carolina was one of them just because of, the fact that I was a UNC fan and everything. But I think my second, choice was actually, communication. And so, then I went on a black college tour my junior year, whatever. We saw 11 schools up and down, the East Coast or whatever. So I applied to some of the black schools that we went to in the whole nine. So, ultimately I actually decided to choose, decided to go to another school at first. I forget what the last group of schools was, but I know Sacred Heart University and NC State were a couple of those schools that, it came down to for me. And at the time, my mom really wanted me to go to Sacred Heart because that's also in Connecticut. It's in a town called Fairfield. And that was at least an hour away or whatever, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like one of those things that, sometimes parents, sometimes mothers or whatever, they want their kids to stay close and all that kind of thing. And like I said, my parents are divorced or whatever, but, my father was actually, helping, make the decision to go to college. And I remember he told me a bunch of things about NC State, which would make that the better choice. But I chose Sacred Heart at first and paid the deposit and everything like that. But then I started to think about it again and sort of realized some of the things that he told me for myself, about the chance to, finally get out of Hartford and, the chance to go to a bigger school and, they have a good engineering program and, just different things that came up, different points or whatever. So then I changed my mind and decided to go to NC State. Now I'll say this too, as far as the sports thing goes, right? Cause I told you, I just decided to go there for the engineering. I didn't know that NC State had such a hatred for Carolina. I figured that I didn't know this. I figured it was going to be a situation like, man, fuck Carolina, fuck Duke, fuck Wake Forest, like, equally saying fuck you to everybody. You know what I'm saying? Like we NC State or whatever. Because from my perspective, as a fan of Carolina and knowing about our rivalry with Duke is our top rival. You know what I'm saying? So I know if I were to go there for some reason, then it would have been hell, right? I would have known what I was walking into. But as far as the NC State shit, I had no idea. So my plan, you asked me about if there was any conflict with my fandom or whatever. What my original plan was I'm always going to be a Carolina fan because that's what I was raised on. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how I came up. When I first started getting into sports, they were the first team that I became a fan of. And that's why they're my favorite of the teams that I actually root for. They're my favorite because they were my first. So I was like, I'm not going to change that. But what I will do is, except for when they play against Carolina, I'll root for NC State as well, because this is where I'm going to go to school for 4 years or whatever. It ended up being 4.5, but you know what I mean? So I got there and just the atmosphere, especially like when basketball season rolled around, the vibe was just so fucking toxic. Like these niggas really have a Napoleon complex and a serious hatred and obsession for Carolina. And I had no idea about that because I wasn't from the state of North Carolina and I had never encountered any state fans or whatever. You know what I mean? Like I knew the state because I knew they were in the same league as us and all of that, but I had never met anybody that was an NC State fan.
So you just rolled up on campus, thought it was going to be cool as could be.
Well, not cool as can be, but like I said, I thought it would have been like equally saying fuck you to Carolina, Duke, Wake Forest, whoever else. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't know that it was going to be like the way that it is with Carolina. For example, like, when, we'll get into this later on, I'm sure, but last year Carolina lost in the finals. Some of the people that were talking the most shit were NC State fans. You know what I'm saying? Like they have a fucking obsession. It's crazy. So yeah, I just didn't know that it was going to be like that. So that actually turned me off. So at some point, like I said, I was trying to be, kind of be like a half NC State fan. But after a while, it just became like such a thing. Like, for example, I don't even know the whole fight song, but there's a part of the fight song that they play at all of the games or whatever, where it goes, go to hell, Carolina, Devil's Deep, something, something, blah, 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 with a red or right at NC State, go State, right? Motherfuckers might not even be singing the rest of the song before that. But when they get to that go to hell, Carolina part, that's the part that it comes from their soul. They bring that shit up and scream that shit at the top of their motherfucker. Go to hell. Really mean that shit, bro. Like, it's crazy. So I was like, you know what? Fuck this shit. I feel that way about my team. Fuck y'all too.
Well, let's talk about it, because you said you were kind of playing the fence for a while. It seems you chose right, because I think all that losing would make you not choose NC State anyway. This week, UNC did it again. They won another national title. They beat Gonzaga 65-71 in what's being described as a rock fight of the game. I say described because I didn't watch it. LB, man, let me know, what did you think watching the game live?
Yeah, rock fight is a good way to describe that. It was not a pretty game. Neither team could really establish any type of a rhythm, and that's sort of on their own. And of course, because of the way that the referees were calling the game, I was listening to something over the course of the week. The game was on Monday, so between then and now, I heard something where they said there was, I think, maybe 43 foul calls on each side, and it ended up averaging out to about 2 fouls per minute. So anybody that knows basketball knows that, flow is very important. Like, for a team to sort of get into a rhythm and run their offense and even, do what they got to do on defense and everything, that's a real important thing. It's like a rhythm game, you know what I'm saying? And the referees blowing the whistle as much as they did, that in addition to neither team really shooting that well. Like, for example, ACC Player of the Year, Justin Jackson, you know what I'm saying? He had a great season this year, won, Player of the Year in our conference and everything like that. He was like 0 for 9 from 3-point range. You know what I mean? Like, he ended up with 16 points, but he wasn't hitting shit from outside. I think Joel Berry was the only person that hit a 3-pointer for our team. So watching the game, it was ugly. There wasn't much pace. There wasn't much rhythm. The referees were too present. I said to one of my coworkers, this week, like anytime, in basketball and football in particular, but I guess really in any sport, but those two, if you notice the referees, that's not usually a good thing. You know what I mean? Like, that they're out there or whatever, but
right. Seen, not heard.
Right, exactly. It's better seen than heard. But when you start hearing that whistle all the time and you're sitting there thinking like, man, let the boys play, that's never a good look. So it was ugly or whatever, but I'm glad that the team was able to, do what they did. Like I said, in one of my earlier answers, we lost in the finals last year. That was a tough loss. Villanova was a really good team. And, there was the high of Marcus Page hitting that tough 3-pointer to tie the game. We could have played better in that game than we actually did. We had a 5-point lead in that game and everything and let it slip away. And it was a little, kind of up and down, and it was looking really bad. Marcus Page hits a real tough shot, a 3-pointer to tie the game. And there was only a few seconds left. So we're thinking, okay, I remember being in here jumping up and down, cheering, yes, Marcus, you know what I'm saying? Thinking it's about to go to overtime. Now, sure, you could still lose in overtime, but at least we get that extra 5 minutes to try to work this thing out. And maybe we come out of here with the win. They come back down. Chris Jenkins hits a 3-pointer, wins the game. Felt like somebody kicked me in my stomach, man. It knocked me off my feet, literally. I was standing up when Page hit his shot, fell back into my chair when Jenkins hit his shot. And a lot of the guys, the main guys from this year's team were on that team last season.
Right.
I wanted these guys to get back to the Final Four, to get back to the championship game for what they term redemption. And I remember I heard Roy Williams say this week, he didn't know that the team actually was talking about redemption or whatever. He knew that it was a goal that everybody wanted to get back, but he didn't know that the team was putting that word on it. But amongst themselves, they were like, we got to get redemption. We got to get back there. So going into the game, I was, before the game, probably in the round before that, the Final Four round, the semifinal round, I was really nervous, cause anybody out there that's a college basketball fan, really a fan of anything, your team was just in the Super Bowl. The week before the Super Bowl, you're nervous as shit.
We're not here to talk about that. Come on, man.
We don't have to talk about that specifically, what happened or whatever, but just think back to the way that you felt going into the game. From the NFC.
I don't recall. I don't recall.
But okay, other people out there, D-Palm doesn't want to talk about that, but think about it. Super Bowl or NCAA final or something like that. You've got like a week or maybe more to sit down and think about it. So you get really excited. You think about, if we win, I'm going to do X, Y, Z or whatever. But it's 7 days. So you got plenty of opportunities to sit there and start thinking about all the bad shit that might happen. So you just become your mind just goes crazy. You got all kinds of shit swirling around in your head or whatever. So that was me going into it or whatever. Then the day of the game, it was a Monday. It was a little bit easier than that Saturday was because, I had to go to work for 10 hours. You know what I'm saying? So, I still thought about it and talked about it, but I also had to take care of business as well. But then it was like the point of, okay, now I'm home and I got to wait for a few hours because the game didn't start until 9:20 Eastern. You know what I'm saying? But at some point when I got home, I felt like a weird sense of calm, come over me. But then the game started and, it was what it was. We get down towards the end and I was still kind of nervous, still hoping that we'd be able to hold on. They made a few plays here at the end, sealed it up. And I'm not even going to lie to y'all out there in podcast land. When those last few seconds wound down and you could see those boys, there was a part before the game actually ended, like with about 7 seconds left or whatever. You could see a couple of them were about to lose it. but they held it together. Then those last few seconds ran out, and a part of their excitement, they were jumping up and down and cheering and stuff, but they started crying and shit. When I saw that shit made me tear up too. You know what I'm saying? And that's the first time I ever teared up.
Come on, man.
Seriously, like, it's something about, you know how it is, man. It's something about seeing grown men cry that touches you anyway. But you could tell, like, how much it meant to them to get back to that point and to redeem themselves from that loss. Like, losing the game, period, would have been bad. But the way that they lost that game last year was so hurtful to, even as a fan, it hurt. But I can't imagine how much more it hurt for them as players. So for them to set that goal for themselves and to get all the way back and to win that shit, like, when I saw a couple of them start crying, I was like, shit, man, these motherfuckers got me up in here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was crazy. It's been a unique thing with UNC because a lot of the problems I have with college basketball is a lack of continuity, but UNC was able to bring back most of a team that did it last year, came a little short, and did it this year. I got to ask now, because I've talked to UNC fans, my old roommate Chad, I used to do G podcasts with, he's a UNC fan, UNC grad. I got to ask, because I know that the view of Roy has fluctuated over the last 15 years. 3 titles now, what's more than Dean. We know Dean meant more to the school and the region than just basketball. Where do UNC fans find themselves with this ongoing back and forth relationship with Roy now?
I mean, I can't speak for everybody. You know what I'm saying? There's division within the fandom. You know, I don't remember what year it was, but at some point, you know, years ago, I started reading and eventually joined the Inside Carolina message board on Scout. And, you know, just over the years of reading the things that people say, it kind of puts it into a different perspective, because you feel like, well, you know, we're all fans of the same team or whatever. So we would be pretty much like-minded on a lot of things. But, you know, some of the things that I'd heard people say about, you know, their experiences with Carolina fans, I knew that I wasn't one of those people and I hadn't met any of those people. But when I started reading that board, I was like, oh, these are the motherfuckers that everybody's talking about. You know what I'm saying? So with that, I say that to say that there have been people that have been very critical of him, that I've seen on there, and, you know, just being in the state now for a while, you know what I mean? There's people that are very critical of him. I've always liked him. You know, I always liked him. You know, even when he was at Kansas, I thought he was a good coach. And, you know, when the talk of him coming to UNC, you know, started swirling around the first time, I was like, let's get it. I didn't think they did a good job of preparing for what if he says no, and they wanted to so-called keep it in the family. And they ended up choosing Matt Doherty, you know, when Roy said no the first time or whatever. It didn't seem to me like they had a good enough plan, you know, like a backup plan, you know, a B and C candidate, because they were so sure that Roy was going to come. He wasn't ready. When he finally did come a couple years later, I was all for it. And so I've always liked him. I always thought that, you know, people had been too hard on him. Now that he has his 3rd championship, I hope for a lot of those people, you know, they recognize the error of their ways, you know what I'm saying? Because the man is a damn good coach. Like, he's already in the Hall of Fame, you know what I'm saying? So he's a Hall of Fame coach. He had great success at Kansas, didn't win the championship, but, you know, he had gotten to the Final Four a number of times and all that kind of stuff. And then, you know, in the 14, 15 years that he's been at Carolina, you know, he's made a number of Final Fours and has, you know, 3 championships. They said going into this year going into this Final Four, that this is his 9th Final Four as a head coach. And in 9 Final Fours, he now has 3 championships. That's more than Dean.
Wow.
That's more than a lot of people. And I had said, you know, because he won in 05 and 09. And in 05, he won with Matt Doherty's players. You know what I'm saying? It was guys that Matt Doherty had brought in. And, you know, Roy took over once they fired Doherty and everything like that. So that was a group of his players, but Roy was able to get them. Think about that. This is not even a group of kids that he recruited, but he was able to get them to buy into his system well enough to go ahead and win a championship. And I remember seeing them the first time that I saw them that year. It was in the Maui Invitational, which the last 3 championships we won the Maui that same year. So the Maui is around Thanksgiving time. For those that don't know, it's a early season tournament that happens in Maui, Hawaii. And And, I think you can only go like every 4 years. So you can't go, 1 year and be back the next. You got to wait like 4 years to go. So the first time I saw them play was in that tournament. They had already played, at least one game before that, maybe two. One game was out in California at Santa Clara, and we lost that game. Raymond Felton was hurt. Somehow we lost that game. Didn't see those games, but I saw them play in the Maui. When I first saw them play the very first time, I was like, if we play like this all season, we're going to win the championship. Hadn't seen anybody else play or anything like that, but I just knew that if they're playing like this, if we got the big men running the floor and we're forcing turnovers and doing all the things that I saw that night, we'll be champions.
Do you think that this third one in the can is enough to kind of unify the fan base behind a guy, like you said, you pointed out all the resume stuff. This guy's brought excellence back to North Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, and sorry for the long-winded answers or whatever, but you know what I'm saying? I do think so. Like, I feel like he did it with somebody else's players in 05. 09 was a group of his own guys, you know what I'm saying? A lot of juniors and seniors and stuff like that, something that you alluded to earlier about, the sort of consistency of teams from 1 year to the next. This one, again, another group of his guys, mostly juniors and seniors and stuff like that. I hope for those people that were critical of him that they look at it now and say, yo, we have 7 overall championships. 1924 was something called the Helms Cup, which was basically kind of like remember how college football used to have the final poll and whoever was number one at the end of that last poll, they were the champion.
Right.
Yes, and all of that. In 1924, there was no NCAA championship. So the Helms is the way that people were given or crowned a championship. It basically came to you being voted the best team and all that kind of stuff. But then we have six NCAA championships. You know what I'm saying? 1957 was the first one, and this is the most recent one. Roy has 3 of them shits, man. Of the 6 NCAA that we have, Roy has 3. So if you're a Carolina fan and you've been giving that man shit, you got to come around now, man.
I definitely hear you, man.
You got to. Like, and if you don't, then you just on some bullshit. Like, straight up. Because, you know what I'm saying? He's done an incredible job in the face of a lot of different types of adversity. And he's always put out winners. The Final Four that the team was made in is the most history. I think they said the championship game was his 100th NCAA tournament game. And not only did he win that, he won the championship. And by the way, early in this regular season, he won his 800th game. I don't know how many wins he has total now, but he won number 800 early in the season. So give that man his props.
Yeah, he definitely handled it, man. It's been a crazy week in college basketball because, like you said, UNC took the win. The tournament's over. We got people winning and losing money because of these damn pools. I don't participate. Shout out to Don Staley and the ladies down in South Carolina, man. Not a school known for basketball. They had the men's team in the Final Four, and Don Staley took the chip home for the first time in, I think, ever for South Carolina. But the last college basketball story I do want to hit is Patrick Ewing arriving in Georgetown. We talked about on the show, the big question being, who's going to tell Big John? I guess if you hire Ewing, no one's going to tell Big John. He's going to be cool with it, right?
Pretty much. Before we go into that real quick, can I just say something about Dawn Staley? I want to give her props, being a Connecticut native or whatever. I do fuck with UConn, but they're just not my number one team. So when the UConn women got knocked out, I decided, I want to see South Carolina go ahead and get it. And the reason for that is Dawn Staley, because, like I said, I was born in 1980. And so probably around 7, 8 years old or whatever is when I really kind of started paying attention to like music and sports and all that kind of stuff. And Dawn Staley was the first probably female athlete, but definitely the first female basketball player that I became a fan of. She was a point guard at the University of Virginia. So I've always had a thing for Dawn, man. Like, she's nice as shit. She was nice as shit on the court. And I thought she was cute too. So she's always been, like, as they say, bae. She's always been bae to me. So when the UConn women got knocked out, I was like, all right, let my girl get it. So I was real happy for her. And I was definitely glad to see that she got her first championship, as a head coach. She didn't win one as a player, in college. I think she's got some gold medals and stuff from the Olympics, but this is her first time, as a player outside of the Olympics or as a coach winning. So definitely got to give shout out to her, yo, because I've always been a fan of hers.
Yeah, but the Ewing hire, sorry, go back to the original question. Do you think the Ewing hire, I know the question we bandied about on this podcast was who's going to tell Big John if they don't hire one of his boys? Hiring Ewing, hey man, they hire one of his boys, but like coach the NBA and like recruiting and coaching in college is way different. You think Ewing can do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge for him is going to be, getting out on that road. Like you said, the recruiting thing, like I'm sure he can do the coaching stuff, the X's and O's stuff, like once the season begins and all that kind of stuff. Cause he's been working as an assistant for a long time in the NBA or whatever. So he'll probably be straight with that. But his biggest challenge is going to be the recruiting. And like people like these kids today, they probably know his name, especially if they've got any type of Georgetown, connection to them at all. Like if they're from that area, if they have any, family members or friends who were Georgetown fans who might have saw him. But it's not like the allure of, I get to play for, like let's say it was Allen Iverson or whatever. Like he played more recently than Patrick did. So, they would identify with him more, but I think he can do it though. It might not be immediate. You know what I'm saying? It really depends on his dedication to getting on the road and building those relationships. Cause that's what recruiting is getting out there and building, a relationship with these kids and their families. I'm pulling for him though, cause he was a player that I really enjoyed watching in the NBA and everything like that. And, you know what I'm saying? So I definitely hope that it works out for him. As far as Big John, yeah, I bet that was an interesting conversation, but it ended up being one of his boys. So, I guess it worked out.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that the biggest wrinkle for Pat is going to be the road stuff. But I do think that two things are working in his favor. One is that, the kids may not know Patrick Ewing just because, there was a time, but, you and I are of a different age. The kids now, though, who knows Patrick Ewing? These kids' parents. All of them know that when Patrick Ewing shows up, things have gotten serious, and some of these dads making some autographs. The other thing Patrick Ewing's got going for him is 15 years as an assistant in the NBA. So if I'm a college kid and I want to go to a guy who knows what the NBA is looking for, he's the guy I'm going to go to. He's the guy I'm going to trust. He's the guy whose words are going to matter to me. Let's move forward now because this has been Masters Weekend, Augusta, Georgia. I've been there before. Took my dad one year. My dad's a huge golf nut. We did the walk through Augusta. We followed Tiger for the day. But as far as UD Pod's concerned, Tiger's not playing, so the Masters aren't happening, so we're not going to cover. Baseball's back. LB, are you a baseball guy?
Nah, not really. I used to be when I was a kid. I heard Bomani Jones say a few months ago, it's been a little while, but I heard him say that he's not really much of a baseball fan anymore because he doesn't have a team to root for. And baseball is sort of a sport that's hard to kind of just watch, all willy-nilly just for the love of the game or whatever if you don't have a team that you sort of focus on. So back in the days, my grandfather was a big Mets fan, so I used to rock with them. But then I switched teams a few times and stuff like that. I've actually been Oakland A's fan back in the day. I've been an Atlanta Braves fan for a while and stuff like that. And the teams that I used to root for, I still want to see them kind of do good. But to answer the question, no, I'm not really much of a baseball person. I'll check them out, maybe to the playoffs or whatever. Maybe watch some of that. But right now, I don't give a shit about baseball.
Yo, that's where I'm at too, man. I grew up in Atlanta in the 90s. Like, I'm the dude who should be the bravesiest of fans. I don't know if you're aware of this, but they recently moved the Braves Stadium from downtown Atlanta up into Cobb County. There's been a lot of reasons why. And for me, it's the ultimate illustration of baseball as a JV sport in this country. What do I mean by that? What I mean is, so the Braves said that the reason we're moving is that most of our quote-unquote fans live in suburban Atlanta. Now, without getting into the larger socioeconomic and racial divide that is Atlanta and explaining why there's no MARTA outside the perimeter by and large and why it underserves most of the city, let's just say that they had a location in downtown Atlanta as opposed to saying, let's convert the people who live near into being Braves fans. We're going to abandon this and move to wherever fans are existing. Like, that's the attitude and mentality and movement and approach of a sport that is fledgling, of a niche sport. I'd expect that out of, like, professional lacrosse, not a sport that says we want to open the umbrella, be as big as possible, reclaim that cachet of America's pastime. It makes me wonder what the hell baseball really wants out of it. And you know what? As someone who has disavowed the Cobb County Braves, I say to hell with them. Furthering my point, there was an ESPN poll over the last 6 months. They interviewed, I think it was over 60,000 respondents, and they named the top 50 athletes, active or non-active, in the world for the United States. The top 50 contained exactly 0 active baseball players. LB meant, like, you and I aren't obviously baseball executives. I know spoilers, people who thought we were. We're not. But we are sports fans, and we are cognizant of kind of how the world works. 0 out of 50 is a bad look for baseball.
Yeah, it definitely is, man. And I didn't even know that they were moving the team outside. I guess I knew that, but until you said it, really hadn't dawned on me that they were moving outside of the downtown area, which, for me, I thought that was one of the coolest things about the city of Atlanta is that, like, most of the stuff that you want to see is right there in the downtown area. You can park or take the MARTA somewhere and basically walk from one stadium to the next, or to the CNN Center, or to the College Football Hall of Fame and all that kind of stuff. So for them to move away from new fans, like, what the fuck kind of business runs away from potential new customers? Like, that's crazy. That's really crazy. I mean, yeah, I don't know about that.
And they're following, like, New Stadium 101, where you say, I'm going to build you a new stadium, but you bottom out the value of your team because people, one, are going to fill up that. So I refuse. I've resolved to never set foot in Cobb County Stadium. I'm never going to go into it. I refuse. But my fiance and her friends, she had friends who wanted to go, so she helped them look for tickets. That mall is sold out until, like, early August. Like, there's no seats available. That's what teams do. You look at the Niners, you look at other teams that have gotten the stadium that they wanted. Within 2 or 3 years, they're going to bottom out that team, because if you cut where you're spending and increase your revenue, because people are going to fill up a new stadium because it's new. You go for 3 years doing that. Then at year 4, you say, we're renewing our commitment to excellence. You raise the ticket price just a little bit, but you also raise how much you're paying all your players. You improve your team, and that way you keep it filled for the first 6 years without really having to spend money for the first 3. It's a game that we've seen played work across the country. It's worked in college football. It worked in college basketball. And it makes me fucking sick because I'm watching it happen down, like, away from my town. Like, I drive, so my office is near the new stadium. I drive past the old stadium to get there to work on the south side. It's the craziest thing in the world. I don't know what's going to happen next. I hope they figure it out. But I tell you what, Mike Trout plays in LA. He is the face of baseball, and he can walk in my house right now, and I go, hey, man, who are you? You got my house. You can walk in here in an A's hat, man.
Yeah, I don't fucking know who he is either. I know him by name, but like you said, if he were to knock on my door right now wearing a Trout jersey, I would. Fuck you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I do recognize Bryce Harper. Like, if he were to knock, oh, Bryce Harper. But I don't know Mike Trout. I don't know a lot of these guys. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know it's kind of like baseball and wrestling are sort of the same for me. I could talk to you about old school shit for days, but these new cats, I don't know a lot of them, man.
But it's crazy because, like, if you go with the most followed athlete in America is John Cena, as a pro wrestler now. But counterpoint, like with baseball, like, I think you're right. It's they've done a very bad job of building stars. And I keep bringing up Mike Trout because, one, he plays in LA, which is the media market you want to be in. So there's a check in your box. 2, he's 25 years old. I didn't know this before I started Googling before this show. He's won 2 MVPs in the 3 years he didn't win it. He finished second. I mean, it is irresponsible that you and I don't that we couldn't pick him out of a lineup is ridiculous.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy.
It speaks to the long-term viability that the only 3 baseball players in the top 50 are all retired. And the last on the list was Pete Rose, a dude y'all pretend don't exist. So, like, I don't know what baseball wants from us as, like, the casual fans, or as guys who we wish still cared, but they're not doing a good job of bringing us back. LB, man, Tony Romo hit the dirt, man. He's out, man. He walked away. He's going to the recording booth. Like, what in the world? So, 2 questions. 1, did you see this coming? And 2, what the hell do the Texans do now?
No, I didn't really. I mean, I know it was an option. I knew it was an option of his because they had talked about, he might be thinking about retiring or going to one of these other teams. It's crazy because he knocked Phil Simms out of the box, and, my NFL team is the Giants or whatever. So, the NFC East, still has battles even outside of.
That wasn't a battle, LB, man. They knocked y'all out the box. Like the Cowboys were a big joker, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you got it. They definitely had the word big written on them. You know what I mean? So yeah, that was a power move. I don't know what Houston does now, man, because it really seemed like they were trying to really, make a push to get him. And I don't know if he had any conversations with them before he decided to go to TV, or even if he should have. I don't know if that's even something that most people would say that he should have done. But I don't know what the fuck they got to do now, because I mean, the people that they had, playing QB for them this past season were terrible. They do have a good enough team otherwise to make a run. There's really not a lot of quarterbacks, man. So I don't know what they do, man. It's I don't know what you think.
I'm at a loss, because you're right. This is a team that was at a crossroads, that looked at their squad last year, that went to the playoffs, that went to New England, played a pretty good half of football, and said, wow, we're probably a quarterback away from being a really, really good football team. J.J. Watt's been on the shelf 2 of the last 3 years. Yeah, he's coming back healthy next year, but how long is that going to last? Clowney's health is always a question. You don't know how big these windows can be, and I think it's a strike now kind of environment that you can't depend on a late first round or late second round draft pick. I think, honestly, especially with Case Keenum getting picked up by Minnesota, we talked about on the show, you and I have talked about on Twitter, Colin Kaepernick, come the fuck on down, baby.
Yeah, I think that actually would be a smart move. Like, of the people that could be available to them with NFL experience or whatever, Cap would be a good person for them to choose, because he's led a team to a Super Bowl. They didn't win, but he's been in there. And he wasn't his greatest this past season, but when he did get a chance to play, he showed that he can still make plays and things like that. So if you get him in a new environment, away from San Francisco, which, even though he seemed to get some support from the team, it still seemed like a toxic environment.
It was a bad team.
Some of the trouble that other people have gotten into, and the plus that they were a bad team, you put him, with a fresh start, in a good team, and try to sort of build his confidence up or whatever, that could work, man.
The trick with Houston and Cap is that they don't need him to come in and do everything. He needs to come in and win the world. Just come in and win and play quarterback. We don't need you to be X, Y, or Z, man. We need you to play quarterback. We need you to be serviceable. We need you to get the ball where it needs to be on time. Which is more than you can say for Tom Savage.
They definitely need that. The dreaded game manager tag, to a certain degree is what they might be looking for. He can make dynamic plays, and there might be opportunities for him to do that. But like you said, just come in, move the ball around, try to limit the turnovers and bad decisions and stuff like that. And if you do that, then the rest of us can take care of our business. Cause if the defense plays well and things like that, you could end up with sort of like a Baltimore Ravens, Trent Dilfer type of situation. I think Cap is better than Dilfer is, but the comparison is still, sort of a guy that is there and is good enough to get the ball where it needs to go to and not harm your team. You don't need anybody behind center that's going to hurt your team. And I think Cap could at least do that, and maybe even more.
And I think you're 100% right, man. That's the line right now. It's like, who's going to come in here and do the least amount of damage? And I honestly think, like, under 30, Pedigree, the guy got the opportunities last year with that sorry roster, still went 14-6 touchdown to interception ratio. They didn't win many games, but hell, I don't know what quarterback would have won games with that squad. I think it's time for them to give him a chance. And for those of you who want to say, when that Romo domino falls, we'll see just how blackballed Kaepernick is. Domino done fell, and it fell into CBS's voting booth, and it fell on Phil Simms' head. Let's talk some NBA before we get out of here. I'm not going to talk about your squad, man, because, rough year. We've all been there. I'm a Hawks fan. I, too, know the perils of rebuild. However, I do want to ask you about this, because even though our Hawks knocked off them their Cavs this weekend, I got to ask, do you really think anyone but the Cavs can win the East?
Oh, man. I think that Cleveland is still the best team, so I expect them to win. But if it's not them, I don't know. No, I don't think so, because Boston has been good, but they've struggled towards the end. I don't know if it's just them looking forward to the playoffs or whatever. Toronto,
it's a 5'9" star,
5'9" point guard. And I don't think Toronto is as good this year as they were last year. Part of that, I think, is because Lowry has been hurt. So to answer the question, I would say no. Actually, I don't think that anybody but Cleveland will come out of the East. But I will say that if somebody does catch them slipping, because they've had their troubles, if they get caught slipping, they definitely could lose. It wouldn't surprise me if they didn't come out of there, but I sort of expect them to get there. But I do think if they do make it out of the East, that they'll probably lose to whoever wins the West.
See, that's a good balanced take. Because for me, until they trade LeBron James, it's their East. You can tell me all you want to about Boston, and how I think maybe they're a couple pieces away. They should have done more of the trade market. They were going to be serious about this here. Toronto, you already hit it. I think Dwayne Casey's actually doing a better job this year. I just think that the injuries won't allow them to hit that plateau that they want to hit. The team that's interesting for me is the Wizards, because I'll tell you one thing about John Wall, he's not scared of LeBron James, not even a little bit. Like, if there's going to be someone that is going to not back down from the challenge, whether he's got the talent behind him or to do it or not is the question. But I'll tell you what, Scotty Brooks is a big upgrade from that old coach.
I think I'm glad you brought them up, because I forgot about them when I was speaking. I think actually, if there is a team that could knock Cleveland out, it would be the Wiz, because like you said, they're not afraid, and it starts with John Wall and the upgrade that they have at coach or whatever. And I think actually if we get a Wizards Cavs Eastern Conference Finals, I think that could go 7 games. And in the game 7, Cleveland probably would have home court advantage because of them being the top seed. But, in a 7-game series, anything can happen or whatever. So I think that Washington has the best chance of anybody to knock out Cleveland.
All right, we're going to have my homie Mike on next week. We're going to have Justin from Three Fifths Pod to go through we're taking a whole episode in just to NBA. We're doing all the postseason awards with all NBA teams, first, second, and third. But LB, man, before I get you out of here, I got to ask the hot topic of the day, MVP race. I am staunch in my, first of all, that LeBron should get it every year because he's the best. But I know how reality is in the non-LeBron division this year. I got Russell Westbrook. That's the UD pod stamp of approval. When we get a vote, that's where this vote would go. Who do you have as the MVP of this season?
I agree with that. I mean, the man just locked up a triple-double average for the season, and that hasn't been done since the 60s. So it's the second time in history. I know his team isn't as good as the Rockets. And James Harden has been great, even though I don't like his game, but I got to give it to Russie as well, man. I mean, it was kind of looking like a 2-man race anyway, but once he secured that over the course of this weekend, you got to give it to him, man, because this man, has made history. You know what I mean? So
between him securing that counting stat that I know a lot of people try to be down on, but it speaks to the well-roundedness of his game. It's definitely, like I said, particularly look at that Thunder roster. People say, those are NBA players. And then you watch them play, and you're like, oh, no, the fact that he's got 10 assists shows just how unselfish Russie really is. And honestly, I don't see – people want to make all these counter-arguments for Kawhi, and people want to give you arguments for James Harden. I think the James Harden thing had legs until he got hurt the last 2 weeks and wouldn't sit out with that hurt wrist. I think he hurt his case. But I'm with you, man. It's Russ all the way. 2 more things before we get out of here. Did you have an MVP in this week? Someone who really, inside or outside sports, stands out for you?
Oh, man, my MVP goes to the University of North Carolina men's basketball team. That's the most valuable thing that happened to me, for me in sports this week. So I got to give it to the Tar Heels, man.
I should have seen that shit coming. My MVP of the week's got to be The Undertaker. After being declared dead for 26 years, Mark Calloway was found in Houston, Texas, because he was not actually an undead zombie mortician. He hung up the boots, and then we talk about old school wrestling, man. That's where it begins and ends with me, man. The Taker, the dead man, he means a lot. Last question before I get out of here, LB. You said you were down with the old school pro wrestling. I gotta ask, were you a Bret Hart or a Shawn Michaels guy?
Shit. Man, I guess I don't know, man. I guess I say Bret Hart, man. The Hart Foundation, man. Him and Jim the Anvil Neidhart and all of that stuff that they were doing back in the day. I'll probably say that at first, but I did like the D-Generation X stuff that Shawn Michaels and them were doing later. But I'll say Bret Hart, though.
We're going to go with your first answer because for this podcast, that's the correct answer. The excellence of execution, once again, takes another guest to add to his tally. LB, man, tell the people where to find you, man.
So on Twitter, it's at L Brothers Media. I have a podcast, Look and Listen Podcast. You can find that on, any spot that you listen to podcasts on, iTunes, Podomatic, Stitcher, all of that stuff. And I have a show account, which is at Look Listen Pod. And I definitely want to thank you for having me on the show. I had a great time, man. Appreciate it.
Man, thank you for coming on. I've been on the Look Listen Podcast before. I'm waiting for my invite back. Like, I don't mean to put people on the spot on this show because it's not a good way to handle your guests, but I'm just saying, like, I got this microphone and I talk about shit.
Yeah, I gotta think of something to get you back on, man. I actually had a wrestling show, but I didn't have D-Palm on there. But yeah, I gotta think of something to get you back on there, man. Maybe some sports related stuff. I'll figure something out and we'll put that out there for the people.
Breathe.